One of the things I really love about getting out and teaching is the interaction it provides with woodworkers, and we're going to have a little of that interaction today. Greg is in the shop, and he's just getting going, right, in the woodworking hobby.
Yep.
And he came here with some questions, so we're going to field those questions live and see what happens. So, Greg, why don't you talk a little bit about just kind of where you're at in your woodworking so people get a feel for your skill level and where you're getting going here.
Well, I'm just getting going on woodworking.
Recently retired, right?
I recently retired. I just bought a new table saw, so I have
Congratulations.
some questions. Thank you. I have some questions about setup.
Okay.
And I also have some questions about my first project and some things that perhaps you could help me with that would have made it a little easier.
All right.
To get it accomplished.
Fire away, and then we'll hopefully these questions will, you know, it's one of these teacher admonitions. If you have a question, somebody else probably has the same question. So, all right, hit me. What do you got? I mean, don't hit me, but.
First question is my new table saw. I'm setting it up, and the things I think are aligning the blade to the miter slots, aligning the fence, and getting the blade vertical.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that there's other ones, but those are the three that I can think of right now.
Those are three big ones, yep.
And I was wondering if there's a specific order that you should follow in setting up the table saw.
Okay, yep. So what I would do is I would start with making sure the blade is parallel to the miter gauge slot first. Then I make the fence parallel to the miter gauge slot. That automatically makes the fence parallel to the blade. It's kind of a A equals B, B equals C, then C must equal A thing. So you want to have the blade parallel first to make all that come together. And then the last thing I would do is check the perpendicularity of the blade to the table. That part, the perpendicular blade part, isn't kind of a deal breaker. You know, if you did that first, it wouldn't really hurt you or help you. But just in the sequence of events in my head, blade to the slot, slot to the fence, and then perpendicular to the table would be last.
Okay. Second question is also on the table saw. Mine is similar to yours. It has the nice fence system, and it's got the measuring gauges on the rail.
Okay.
And I was wondering if it is necessary to use separate blades for cross-cutting and ripping.
Okay, it's a great question. There's a couple of right answers to this, at least a couple of right answers to this. One would be you can get a dedicated rip blade. Rip blades typically have 24 to 40 teeth on the rim. Dedicated crosscut blade, which usually have 60 to 80 teeth on the rim. Your crosscut blade can also do sheet stock, so it's a dual purpose. What comes out of that is that when you're ripping wood, cutting in the same direction as the grain, you'd use that ripping blade. When you're cross-cutting or cutting man-made materials or sheet stock, you'd use the finer tooth blade. You never want to use that fine tooth blade on your ripping cuts because the gullets, the valleys between the teeth aren't big enough to carry the chips out of the cut, and you'll very quickly overheat the blade. So the other answer that's a right answer is you can put a combination blade in. So in today's saw blade marketplace, a real common blade for that is a 40 tooth alternate top bevel blade, and that will rip effectively and cross cut effectively and handle veneered sheet stock pretty well. So if you wanted to just have one blade in the saw all the time, you could do that. Now I think kind of part of your question was there's a cursor, a pointer on the fence that gives you a measurement. So if I change blades, what's the net effect of that? And in the real world, I find if I do go from a rip blade to a crosscut blade, the kerf, the size of the groove it makes, is so negligibly different from one to the other, I don't really have to recalibrate my cursor every time I change blades. And that could be different with your blades. You know, you'd have to kind of check it to make sure. But in my case, I find it's pretty consistent from blade to blade, so it's not a big deal.
Do you rely on the gauges on the front rail a lot, or do you ordinarily check?
I calibrate the cursor one time, and when it says 4 inches, it's 4 inches. And then I never measure between the blade and the fence.
Okay.
Unless there's a dado head in that changes everything. But from blade to blade, I just use the pointer on the fence.
All right. Third question is about routers. My first project is a cabinet.
Putting Wi-Fi in your house, is that the... Oh, not that
Yeah,
kind of router. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know anything. I know less about those than I do about
Okay,
the,
we'll stick with the
power tool
woodworking
router,
routers.
yeah.
Okay.
And I'm cutting dados for shelves in larger sheets. So I'm using the router and not the table saw. And I was wondering, when you use the router in a straight edge, do you come at it from a specific direction or does it matter?
Oh, it matters a lot. And isn't that coincidental? I have a piece of wood and a straight edge and a router right here on the bench. It's just crazy how this stuff works out.
Yeah.
All right. I knew that question was coming. So here's the deal. Here's my panel. Here's my fence. And I'm going to just go ahead and clamp that down. Okay. So now Greg's question is about cutting dados, and with a, say, a 3/4 inch bit in our router, we could plow across the panel my right to left or from my left to the right, and there is a distinctly correct direction to do this. So it has to do with the rotation of the bit in the router. When you look at the top of a router, all routers are going to spin that bit clockwise. So as a result, when we feed, we want to feed from right to left when the fence is between you and the router. And what happens with that dynamic is that when the bit is cutting this way and it's entering the wood as you move from right to left, the bit is actually, the cutting action is helping to hold the router against the fence. If we go from left to right, the bit is entering here and it's going to have a tendency to pull the router away from the fence, and it makes it very difficult to control and really very unsafe to control. So when the fence is here and the base of the router is here, going in this direction is going to help keep the whole system against the fence so everything comes out right and comes out safe. Make sense?
It does, and it explains why my dado went.
Got a little snaky on you?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right.
That take care of you?
That does.
All right, thanks, sir, for coming in.
Thank you.
And I hope you enjoyed Q&A with George.